All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Beta Alpha Psi meeting. Today we have Goldman Sachs here to come and speak to us today. Please give your undivided attention. Let's ask a lot of questions. And I'm going to let Chris take it away from here. Yes.
I'd like to remind you that we're going to record.
We did. I asked them about that earlier. So we're good. So.
Yep. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Chris Winter. We're here today from Goldman Sachs, or Goldman Sachs Ayco, as our division is now called. So at heart, we're the wealth management or financial advising arm of Goldman Sachs. So we're going to talk to you about our various roles. We all have slightly different roles. So I'm an advisor, right? I have a book of clients, and just to call it typical or maybe not a typical relationship with clients, right? About me, so after getting the same 2 degrees from the same school as my father, which is this one, so I literally sat in your seats 15, almost 20 years ago. So I graduated from here, went right through, did the 4-in-1, got my MBA right away. So a bunch of the names are different, some of the names are the same. But now, so I started working with Ernst & Young, right, accounting firm, now as EY, right out of college. In their financial advising, kind of learned there, made the switch to Ayco or Goldman Sachs about 9 years ago. And here I am. So now I'm an advisor, right? I have a book of clients. We do everything from investments, obviously, or Goldman Sachs. What I think is a little bit different is we also do taxes for clients, right? When I say we do taxes, not only tax planning, but we actually prepare most of our clients' taxes as well. So our April and October months are usually very busy for us, which is why I purposely picked November for us to come and speak to you today. I'm going to let Meg and Billy introduce themselves, but as far as, one of the things I was asked is, what are some of the skills that help you exceed in our type of industry? And I tried to put one of those skills in practice today, right? Because one of those skills, in my opinion, is trying to figure out what the client should be asking me or doesn't know to ask me, right? What do I want them to know that they don't know to ask me, right? So when I was asked to come here, I said, what can I do for students? How can I get you some knowledge that you would want that you don't know to ask? So I brought 2 of my colleagues who not too far long ago were in your seats. So we're gonna make this kind of like a Q&A session between Meg, Billy, and I. We're gonna leave quite a room at the end. I'm sure you guys have been in plenty of classes where the more you talk, the more interactive it is, the more everyone gets out of it. So please, right, no one likes to come up here and just talk to you all the time. So as best you can, ask questions as we go along. So I'll hand it over to Meg if you want to tell them about yourself a little bit and maybe your role at our firm.
Of course. Hi guys, I'm Meg. I graduated 2022 my undergrad in business administration. I took the 4+1 program as well, just like Chris. I graduated in May of my MBA in finance. So I did an untraditional route. I decided to, after getting a job at Goldman Ayco, I decided to start my career last July and work on my MBA. So it's definitely doable. You're able to definitely work full time while doing your MBA. It might be a little difficult. You definitely have to be organized. Nobody can handle, especially at FDU. I grew up locally actually, so I grew up in Flowing Park. And I'm a client analyst at the firm. So client analyst is basically, in essence, like I like to refer to myself as a COO of a team. My job is basically getting everything across the finish line, speaking to the clients on a daily basis to make sure they're okay. And the one difference for myself with Billy is I'm not currently licensed yet. I did pass my SLE exam, and licensing is my next step to progress my career into Billy's spot, which Billy will talk about a little bit more further. Yeah.
The first exam you passed, did you study on your own or did you go to any sort of, does Goldman offer training? Is that how you did it? Would it have made a difference if it was here for you to train?
It's a great question. I can bring that up later. I studied on my own. I decided it was something in order to progress my career, something I wanted underneath my belt. And the firm does sponsor you if you are a financial analyst and you come in that route. And I think I was going to talk about this. I know FDU does offer a course for the SLE exam. Highly recommend it. If I can go back a few years, there's one course I think I would have taken at FDU. It sounds silly, it's only 1 credit. And I think that's where my logic was when I was in your seats. So I'm not going to take a 1 credit is always the hardest classes. But if you do want to break into finance, that is a great plus on your resume. So maybe you look for. So that's a little bit about about me. I guess you guys will learn more later.
Goldman Sachs at FDU. It's on Zoom right now. Billy, my big, is there.
Where they're going.
I think it's just like a panel, kind of like information.
You have yourself on Zoom? Okay.
Hi, I'm Billy. I graduated from FDU in 2020, the fall, 2021 semester early. I played soccer at FDU and was a finance major and a wealth management minor. So I kind of knew what I was getting into and what I wanted to do. And when this crossed my desk, I was applying to a couple different jobs. I saw the name, I was very intrigued. It's such a high status firm, and I think it's and I really didn't know what to expect in the beginning. And then with some more research and talking to Brian Teague, who is the head of our region, I learned more about the firm, and not even about the firm as much as the people that work at the firm. And that really drew me in because he really just drew on how much the culture affects where you work. And he really just pushed that forward. And everything he said is 100% true. But coming out of college, I pretty much knew that finance was the thing, wealth management, and all the classes that I took. I remember Professor Koza really helped me with a couple of the classes that I had, and just pushed me to like what I wanted to do. And I couldn't be happier where I ended up. The people I work with are great, and my role as a financial analyst is a little bit different than Meg's. I rely on Meg like so much in my role as well as the team does, and I think leaning on each other in the team is really beneficial. My role is more of an analytical role, I would say. So I do a lot of the planning for meetings and the meeting prep. So whether that's looking at an income tax projection for our client that we're going to present, or going over a portfolio review, or different types of exhibits that we really present to the client, whether it's the account manager or the financial analyst presenting to the client on that end. I help with that, and more overall, a lot of the analytical and finance part of it, I would say.
Good. Thanks. So we're part of a financial advising team, right? You were not a wealth management minor like Billy was. What do you like about, call it our industry, the financial advising industry, and then what do you not like about it as much?
I think my favorite part about the role I'm currently in is that I get to talk to the clients on a daily basis, and it's building the relationships. I knew it was something I was intrigued in getting into. Finance is a big part of my life. I love everything financial in my own like aspect of life, that I was like, okay, I'm doing this for myself, helping my friends and family, may as well turn it into a career. So I think that's something that's one of my favorite parts about the job currently. But I think one of the things like the harder parts about my job, because I know I told you guys like I act as like the finish line, so I'm like I take all the details I get from the advisor and Billy, who serves in the financial analyst role, I take it across and I get to the client, or I'm doing all the back office, like operations. So I think one of the harder tasks is, for example, our job, Goldman is very compliance oriented. So we have, for new accounts, for example, we're opening new accounts on a daily basis for clients, from client meetings. And it's hard to explain to the client that it's going to take a few weeks. There's a bunch of back end review that has to go into it. It's one of the harder parts about my job.
Okay. Billy, you were not that far removed, so this is a very broad-ended question. What do you know now that you didn't know that you wish you knew?
I wish I knew probably how much of like a team you really work in. So like when sitting in those seats and being in college, like you do a team project and you have some people who slack off and kind of wait till the last minute to do the work. And then you're just like, oh, it's never gonna apply to me in like the real world like that. However, once you're in the real world, mostly of what you do is a lot of individual, but everybody comes together at the end to get the finished product across. And I think that's a huge part of it. And like knowing your team member strengths and weaknesses are huge, and just learning how to work together in a team, I wish I did better at. But being a part of soccer helped me a lot, and just knowing how to rely on your team members.
I want to keep a question for you. So, how have you viewed taxes, right? Because you're a wealth management minor, and I don't think tax preparation or a busy or October season is really in your mind when you're in wealth management, right? How has that gone? Do you see that you like it? Did you not like it? You know, you can be honest. That's what we're here today.
So when I first learned that we were going to be doing taxes, that was kind of like what I got myself into. Didn't really know about it. I was like, my goodness, like, no way they let me handle this, but, I think the training, I think now knowing it, you see how much is involved in every decision that you make in the finance industry. How to be tax efficient in your investments and stuff like that is huge. And it's something that's probably overlooked in a lot of firms as it is, and just in everyday life, being tax efficient. So learning that, just adding another like strength to something I'm able to do, I think makes you more marketable in a lot of ways. But yeah, definitely. I mean, taxes are great, sometimes a little boring, but I mean, it just adds another skill and it's a change of pace at the end of the day, I think, when April and October come around.
Meg, what do you think?
I have a similar viewpoint of Billy. I think, personally, I think it's a great for Ayco Goldman Sachs, when we have clients, I like to describe us as a family or friends that ask me what I do. We're a one-and-all stop shop for clients. So if you come to us, we do everything from your investments to taxes. So at the end of the day, you only have to talk to one person. You talk to the advisor, but you also have the team backing you. I think that makes us it makes us an easy sell. I think that's something I'm looking for in the future. Like my career, obviously I chose the firm, but if that was something, if I did come to the firm, that's something I would want. It's time for me to make like decisions and.
Sure. I do think that's one thing that truly sets us apart is the taxes, right? Where I had a very different view of wealth management, right? I thought it was you sold your cousin's annuities, and then once you kind of went through your Rolodex of people, they kept your business and you kind of went on your way. So I learned that's not really what happens, right? But I remember interviewing with a number of firms, and they kind of, oh, we do everything for clients. But you'll kind of see that, I don't really know if that's the truth, because let's be honest, when you do tax planning for someone, right, saying, hey, listen, here's what your projected tax liability is going to be. Here's some ideas I have to help you reduce your taxes, right? Or something that you can do about it. That doesn't really make any money. It's not like you're getting them to invest with you or you're selling them an insurance product. Taxes don't generate a lot of revenue. So if you are considering a career in the wealth management industry and so they say, listen, we really do everything, do your due diligence. Do they really do everything or do they say it? Right? Because I can tell you that's my honest pitch when I am marketing a new client. When I say we do everything, if I'm not preparing your taxes, I want to see it from your accountant before you hit the submit button, right? Or if I'm not doing your taxes, I want to compare what my projection said to your tax return to make sure you didn't have any surprises, right? That's my job, right? Tax planning. And if there's any accounting or people that are going into the tax profession, that's just not something that a lot of CPAs do, right? A lot of times it's a lot more tax preparation focused versus planning focused. Meg, I'll come back to you. So the latter half of your college career, right? COVID, kind of hybrid, entering the workforce, we were still kind of hybrid. What were your views on working from home versus working in the office when you first started, and has that changed over the last years?
Of course, I started back in July, as I mentioned. I think it's very important to be in the office. The amount of information I learned being in the office versus working at home is totally different. I'm able to lean over to Chris, ask him a quick question, or Billy. And if I'm at home, it's a phone call or a Teams message, which can take longer to answer. And being in the office, you overhear other colleagues talking on the phone, talking to clients, say, oh, that's a great point, I want to implement that when I'm talking to clients or my team. So I think I would say, as we are allowed to work remotely one day a week, I think it's a great way to be flexible. We're able to have the flexibility and that stuff, but I would say going into your career, expect to be in 5 days a week. That's the best way you're going to learn. And we always say here at Goldman, drive your own bus, and that's what you have to do.
Billy, anything different?
Yeah, no, I would say when I started 5 days in, and I think that's the best way to learn. I think that when you work remote, I think that you might work longer hours, but you're not as focused as you are the entire time, for sure. But being in the office was for the first half of when I studied for my tests, and then for the rest of the training, it was 5 days a week. And I think that's the best way to learn. And then when I started my actual role, the hybrid option is offered. But I was still in more days because I just felt as if if I needed a question to be answered, because I was new to the role and learning so much at once, that was the best way for me to learn. And I relied on, everybody that sat around me, and even the account managers are always open to answer questions that I might have. Then also just like talking to other managers, maybe how they run their book and how they approach client meetings and stuff like that. And just having those interactions you can't get at home, I think are the biggest thing about being in person. Now we're 4 days, a lot of it would be 5 before. And I think that 1 day flexibility for being able to do stuff at home as well is very, very nice, and it lightens the load a little bit, but definitely in the beginning, 5 days is, I think, is like very, you should definitely do.
Yeah, I would echo. Before the pandemic, our New Jersey office kind of led our entire company. We were 1 day work from home, and that was ahead of the curve. But you kind of had to earn that. I think it was either 1 or 2 years worth of experience you needed in order to be able to work from home. So you kind of had to be there long enough. And I was sharing with Pat before we came in. So I had an analyst that joined in the middle of 21, so we were still basically 90% from home. Okay. And we ended up having a conversation about a year later. Because I said, "Oh yeah, I saw Mr. Wonderful on CNBC, and he was, saying this work from the office is stupid." And she said, "I really agree with him." And I kind of had in my head, I went, "Yes, but what you don't know what you don't know, in the sense that you're not as far along in terms of you're not gaining the knowledge of our job as you could be or should be, right?" And that wasn't her fault. She just wasn't in the office. It's amazing. It doesn't seem like such a barrier to IM you and say, "Hey, listen, can you get on the phone and we're Zooming," as opposed to just going, "Hey, Billy, can you literally just turn your seat around and look at this with me?" It seems like not that big of a barrier, but when you're brand new in the company, you're just human nature. You're not gonna IM that person or call that person as often as you would. When they see the deer in the headlights look in your face, yeah, I'll come sit down. Okay. So one more question for you, Meg. In the interview process, I know myself and our ultimate boss, Brian T, who's very involved with Professor Poza. I believe he's on the board. Yeah, he's on the Silberman board. But one of the ways we try to attract talent is really stressing the culture of at least our New Jersey office. I think it spreads beyond that, because I've had I asked the interns at the end of the summer, what surprised you? And it was Goldman Sachs. I thought you guys were a bunch of stiffs. So hopefully I put my words in my mouth. Did we stress the culture on the interview process? And would you say, how would you describe our office in terms of just being an overall fun place to work? Do you like the people that you work with? What's kind of your impression based on what you were sold and now that you're here?
Of course. So one of the big questions I was asking when I was interviewing was, what is your culture? What is the office culture like? How are the colleagues? I had an internship previous to coming to Goldman, and the office culture was not there. I think part of it was due to the fact that a lot of people work at home and they require the interns to be in 5 days a week. So I think that was one of the questions. I know you probably can echo this. I think I asked Chris probably 1,000 times, like, what's the culture? Describe the culture. And I would ask every question around it to tie back to. They always said the culture here is undescribable. You will not understand the culture until you walk in the doors. And I can't ever enough, like, honestly, I can walk into anyone's office, ask them a question. I can walk to any of my colleagues' desks. It's a simple, "Hey, how are you?" The people walk by, and that's something I love, and built in the relationships with my colleagues.
Yeah, one of my first bosses said, sometimes that's what they call it work, right? Sometimes work is tough, right? Tax season, the end of March, we're all putting in a lot of hours, and that's not going to be the most fun time of your career, right? But I organize a Jets game, right? We're all going to the Jets versus Falcons game in a few weeks. I've been doing that for a few years. We have a company softball team. There's happy hours. There's just always different things to do. Somebody many years ago organized paintball, which is an interesting thing to do with your colleagues. But there's always something going on. I do think it's very open and inviting, but we try to have fun too. And I think that's important because one of the things I have is the final piece of advice. And that we're not now, but it ties into now. My father had told me, because no one loves going to work every day. He's like, actors, actresses, and professional sports. Yeah, nobody likes going to work every day, but you can't hate going to work every day either. right? And the people that you're with are gonna make a big part of how much you like or hate going to work. So I would, as best as you can, try to get a feel for the culture as you're interviewing, right? Because we're gonna remember too, and I remember when I was in your seats, right? I just wanted to get the job. Remember, you're kind of interviewing them too, right? You want to make sure that this is gonna be the right place.
Yeah, no, just piggybacking off that, I think that's a huge thing that a lot of people miss when interviewing. They just look at it as like, oh, I just want to work there, I want to work there, I want to work there. But like, you're also, you have to look at it as, like, you're interviewing them, and however they come off is how a lot of the office is going to come off as well. So that's a huge part. Like Chris interviewed me, and Chris is a perfect example of our offices. Just very enlightening and always open to put out his hand. So I think that's a huge thing. Switching to asking some questions to you, Chris. So you talked about you worked at EY in the beginning. So if you wanted to go through that stage, just how you kind of ended up there, and how now you're here at Goldman Sachs Ayco, and your transition period.
Sure. So I'm a financial advisor, and I knew that I did not want to be a financial advisor when I graduated. To tell you that, right? So my view, my understanding of being a financial advisor at that time was, like I said, you sell all your friends' life insurance and annuities for whatever firm you can get into, and then once you're done, if you can't continue producing the business, you move on, they keep your business, right? But I had a friend who also went to FDU, graduated here, had me worked at Ernst & Young in a financial advising aspect, and he said, listen, come work, it's a good firm, you kind of get your, your foot in if you want to go someplace else, that happens all the time. And so that's what I did. And honestly, a couple of years in, I didn't know if it was for me. I liked the tax aspect. I thought about, do I want to do taxes full time? I didn't know, but I got in with a good firm, right? I was in the financial advising area, and then I did a rotation within the company where I went and worked in the tax department. So I did an Ernst & Young 415, in Times Square when they were still there. So it was just an experience. So if my piece of advice for you there is, get in with a firm that you think you like, right? That there might be some areas that you, even if you're not 100% sure that's what you want to do, there's always ways to pivot, right? Any firm worth anything is going to want to keep good people, right? So if you're with us and you want to go to someplace else within the firm, we're not going to prevent you, right? Another good example I have is a couple of years ago. I don't think you guys know him, but he started as an analyst with us, right? And left to go to Goldman in the city because he wanted to work in the sports and entertainment aspect. And now he's there. He's working with athletes. Okay, but he worked with us for 2.5 years, and now he's a Goldman employee, and it's just an internal shift versus, he wasn't at Harvard MBA getting into that right out of college kind of thing. At Ernst & Young, there was a little bit of a glass ceiling there. You can only do so much in the department that I was in. My boss at Ernst & Young was from Ayco, so I interviewed with Ayco, and I told them where I was going, and exactly where I was going. I started as an analyst in November of 2014, so just at 9 years. Kind of worked my way up. Now, I don't know if I can see myself doing something else. As a financial advisor, I like to say it's a perfect combination for me. I think it plays to my strengths because I can understand kind of the numbers aspect. I realize now I don't know if I was smart enough to go be one of those hedge fund investment people. But I also thought I had a little bit more people skills than those stereotypical people tend to have. So this kind of gives me the best of both worlds. I'm able to talk to people. I like teaching. I really enjoy coming back and doing things like this. So I'm usually raising my hand and helping the new classes that are coming in. I still get to have my hand in the market, know what's going on in investments, but then I get to talk to a client today who's 85 years old and is very afraid that his 60-year-old daughter doesn't know what to do with her money. And it became a psychology kind of session. It had nothing to do with, I can tell you how everything goes, Ed, right? I can't tell you what you should, right? So I didn't want to do this when I graduated, and now I can't really see myself doing, my understanding was not reality at that point. So roll with the punches.
So going off the question, like your ending, saying you didn't see yourself doing this, now it's the perfect fit for your life. now that you're a father too, how would you describe like your work-life balance?
So work-life balance is interesting, because there's no one definition, right? What does work-life balance mean? You ask everyone, you're gonna have a slightly different answer. My wife and I basically have two different definitions, right? To me, that means that sometimes life is going to take a little bit more of your time. And then to me, that means that work is going to take a little bit more of that time, right? My wife is probably more one that I'm hired from 8 to 5, and if life gets in the way of some of that, well, then life needs to get in the way of some of that, right? That's just her perspective. It's not right or wrong. If you went the more traditional Goldman Sachs route as an analyst in our New York City office, I don't know what your definition of work-life balance is, but you're probably not going to have a lot of life, right? You're going to be working 70 hours. You decide whether that's for you. So I have a 3.5-year-old daughter and a son that's 8 months old. I love the culture where we are. As a male, if I wanted it, I got as much as a female in terms of maternity. Right, so the work-life balance to me is there, right? Am I going on vacation in March for the rest of my career during tax? Probably not. That's okay, right? So work-life balance, you need to decide what that means to you and what you want. And in particular, know that that can change over time, right? When I started my career, I got married a little bit later than average, right? I think I was 35 when I got married. Up until I was 31, I didn't mind putting in 60-hour weeks. I didn't have to every week. That just wasn't where I was in the culture, but I really didn't have much going on. Now, I generally leave the office by 4:30 because I have responsibilities at home. Doesn't mean I don't log on at 8 o'clock when the kids are in bed. Not every night, but if I have to, I know that that's a possibility. For the most part, again, our culture is you need to have some sentiment of regular business hours, but when you need to put in those extra hours, it's up to you, whether it's 5 a.m. or 9 p.m.
Yeah, no, good, perfect answer. So you said you're an account manager and you're pretty much the head of a team, I would say. What do you expect of new members that might join the team as an analyst or a client analyst, and what do you expect?
Yeah. So the way it works, right? I'll be calling it, so we're kind of we're switching from an account manager to advisor, just kind of verbiage there. So this is representative of the team. You have an advisor, financial analyst, and a client analyst, right? Ultimately, the clients are called mine in the sense that if something goes wrong, it's my butt on the line, if you will. So I have my clients. The clients generally don't change, but members of my team will. And I'd say it's AEO, attitude, effort, and organization, right? Because that's three things no one in our firm is necessarily going to teach you, right? I can't teach you to have the right attitude. For example, I don't need to pick on that former team member of mine, but when she would say it this way, she saw working from home as a right, not a privilege. And to me, that's a reflection of attitude, and I didn't think that really matched up for, for what I wanted my team to be. No one's going to teach you attitude, right? Coming in, being optimistic, being willing to learn, being coachable. No one's really going to teach you that. So attitude, effort, right? Your work ethic is your work ethic, right? Again, no one's really going to teach you. They can guide you. You're going to have mentors, but no one's going to teach you on how to put in more effort. And organization, I'd say, is arguably the most important, right? The minute you walk in, I like to joke, the minute you know where the bathroom is, I'll show you where the cafeteria is, right? Kind of thing. You're never going to stop learning. And the more, week 2, you're going to have more on your plate than week 1, and you're going to, week 3, you're going to have more than week 2. So as time goes on, you're going to have more and more balls in the air that you're juggling. Guess what? If you're brand new on my team and you say, like, listen, sorry that I missed that email, I can't teach you how to not miss an email, right? Keeping yourself organized, right? We all know those people that have a gazillion things on their desk. How many, CEOs you think are really like? How many, right? Probably I'm willing to guess. I don't know, but I'm willing to guess, right? So keeping yourself organized. Again, I am continually evolving how I organize myself because I pick up a tip here and there. We get new technology for reminders, right? Our phones. But organization, for the most part, you need to figure out yourself. You'll get tips, but I can't teach you to have a good attitude. I can't teach you to put in the effort, and I can't teach you necessarily how to keep yourself organized. If you can come in with those things, I can teach you how to do a tax return. I can teach you about the different investments we have and why and how they fit. I can't teach you those other things. So that's ultimately what I look for. And then as you're actually doing the work, it sounds simple, but if you cannot make the same mistake twice, you're gonna, by month 6, you're not making a lot of mistakes because you will have seen and made a lot of mistakes by then. So, and you'd be surprised that it's not uncommon to see those same mistakes over and over. And that's where you sit down and go, what's up, what's not connected.
I think going off Chris's point right there is, it's okay to make mistakes. When I was in your guys' seats, like I was so afraid of making a mistake, not getting an A on an exam. I think Billy can talk about that. I was a little crazy about doing too well in school. So I think it's okay, like as long as you just don't make that mistake again. Just mistakes are how you learn.
Billy, I'm gonna take it back to you because, so in terms of work-life balance, right? You and I are in different places in life. How do you describe that?
Yeah, no, I would say exactly kind of how you described it. Definitely little different parts of life. Probably stay up a little later sometimes, but now maybe you probably doing that thing. But I'm an early morning guy, so I like to get into the office like very early, and that's when I work my best. So, but overall, there's going to be weekends and weekdays that are much longer than others. So, for instance, like 2 weeks ago was one of the busiest weeks I ever had, and it's just one of those weeks. You just get in the office early, you're staying later. But then 2 weeks later, like this week, is much more of a breeze, which is nice because it's a little bit lighter on the meetings this week, and it comes and goes, I would say, in fluctuations. It's like a wave, it's just always up and down. But overall, like if I have something I need to get done, my boss will let me go do that, and then I'll make up the work. It's more, you just have to get the work done. And those hours add up at the end of the day sometimes, but you just need to be able to position yourself in order to get the work done at the end of the day. I think that's really good.
It's interesting time because the story I have is a client I met this morning. He came to our office, but he's old. He's 85, right? He's an elder retiree. And it was a year or two ago. I just happened to be working on a Sunday. It was during football season. And to me, I didn't mind that. Right? I'm there on my laptop. Things aren't coming in, so I'm only really getting things off my plate. But to me, I think I only had one child at that point. She might have sleep, but I didn't know. I had the football on. I was able to kind of just dedicate. And he responded to me right away. I said, Ed, can you call me? He goes, Chris, I'm calling on a Sunday. I said, Ed, I do this so that when I need to leave at 3 on a Wednesday for a dentist appointment or for, I do that. And I don't think twice about it, right? For the most part, your clients are humans, right? Some of you are in the psychology of investing course. I think we have a psychology of investing course. We'll talk about this. Your clients are human. The more you make yourself more human, you get a better relationship. But what's interesting is, he's from a different era where you didn't work on Sundays and you certainly didn't talk to clients over the weekends. That's changed a little bit. I have colleagues that will, if they're sending an email past call at 6 o'clock at night, they will put on the delayed send so it will not go to the client until 7:30 or 8 a.m. the next morning because they don't want to set that precedent with the clients, and that's fine too. Right? I'm very close with Billy's, the advisor that Billy works with. The way he puts it, he goes, I want you to know that I'm always available. I'm always accessible. I'm not always available. Right? So if you send me a fire drill or send me a question over the weekend, I will read it, but if it's not urgent, I'm probably going to respond on Monday. I might respond with got it, get back to you Monday so that they know. Yeah, it's just kind of finding what your groove is.
Also reading your client, I think that's a huge part, and setting expectations for the client and knowing that exactly what you're saying, making it known that you got the email and we're going to touch back on it Monday with a call. Just setting that up, I think that's a huge part of it too.
So Meg, call it 1 or 2 pieces of overall advice for you about our firm, the real world in general, the financial advising industry, just 1 or 2 pieces of advice.
I think I said my one piece of advice before, but I'm gonna bring it back up because I think it's that important. Enroll for the SIE course for the spring. I can't stress it enough. I know, I was talking to Pat before this, we came a little early. And they are offering this spring, so it's a pass-fail course, as Pat said. So you don't have to take the exam, but it's basically gonna be a tutoring session. And that exam, I know Chris probably mentioned this, like that's what he's gonna look for in the future on resumes, and it's gonna help you stand out. So if you're applying, even if you don't want to get into the financial advisory role, I know other firms do require it, and it's a great perk for your own personal financial journey as well.
Yeah, touching on that, like, I know people that do interviews, for our company and stuff like that, and so I'll be like, oh, how are the candidates, and how is everybody? And that sets you apart, right, whether like 1% has their SIE. It might seem like a thing, a small thing, but when I started, I wish I had it, because how Goldman does it is, like with testing is very different than a lot of other firms. So it's kind of a time crunch, and you need to pass all these exams, and it gets stressful at times, but taking one off the plate right away helps you. So just to preface, I'm licensed in the SIE, the Series 7 and the 66. And that's pretty much standard at a lot of companies with that do a lot of things now. The series like 63, 65, like there's just so many different series, but getting ahead of the SIE is pretty much standard for all. And I think that's a huge way to get ahead. And put you to the top of the list of the resume.
I actually spoke with a gentleman at UBS yesterday. He was saying, I'm gonna screw this up, so, but whatever. Those that passed the SIE, the percentage of them being successful in passing their future registrations is much higher.
100%. So yeah, once you have the SIE, you come in, it sets you apart, because then you're able to study more, you get more time to study for the other exam. That maybe somebody else that has to pass that SIE doesn't have time to pass that, doesn't have that same amount of time that you have to pass the Series 7 or 66, for instance. So definitely recommend. Meg, what you told me about that, I thought it was stupid for not taking it, but.
In fairness, it was just starting when you
It
guys were
wasn't,
here.
I wasn't made aware of it.
We just
I don't
started.
know.
I think I saw the emails about it, and I think I said to Pat, it's a one credit course, like why am I gonna waste my time?
And before that, we started as a workshop
Yeah.
over COVID.
Now look,
Yeah.
you see how much
More
of a
formalized
necessity
now.
it is.
Yeah.
You see how much of a necessity it is. That's why they offer it, of course, that's why I think FDU does such a great job at that, and knowing what the real world offers and just taking advantage of that. So definitely recommend that.
Do you look for things like Bloomberg certification or so? Does that make a difference?
No, we generally don't use the Bloomberg term, I say generally, in our division, we don't use the Bloomberg.
But
term.
even in screening people, you don't use something. Do you?
Yeah, more certifications, I think, helps, but I've done some interviews, I don't know that I would differentiate that from, that would be a differentiator for our division.
How about CPA?
CPA, yes.
Yeah.
So to go from a client analyst up to an advisor, you do need some sort of advanced degree or certification, right? So an MBA, CPA, JD, CFP, probably enrolled agent, I don't even know that's anymore. So in order to be an advisor, you do need some sort of additional education.
I think I would recommend, I know all you guys, they're juniors now, apply for the 4+1 program. I think it's one of the, I did it, and it's a lot in the beginning to think about just getting your MBA right out of college. You want to be done with your graduating, you want to start your career, start making money. But it's not like now I'm done, like I don't have to go back if I don't want to. I can more quickly get into that advising role after being a financial analyst. So get it over in the beginning of your career, you don't have to worry about it.
I did the same thing, and I remember being there with people that were in the real world with children, and it was a lot tougher for them than it was for me. I can tell you that. My father said, no one can take the education away from you.
Chris, I love your AEO thing, specifically because when I meet with students on resume reviews, I try and tell them that, like say they're a cashier at ShopRite. I go shopping, I know what the tasks are, but what is the impact and what are the transferable skills? So how does a candidate show AEO on their resume? What could they do on their resume because I'm assuming that's important for you when you're hiring. So how does that stand out to you on a resume?
On a resume versus
It's hard.
I probably have to think about it on the resume, how that would come through, but in the interview. And I've done interviews where people literally were told the day before. That's not ideal, and I get that. But no matter when you're talking, you can tell the people that have life to them that they're truly interested. And I can tell the people that took the interview because it said Goldman Sachs, might as well interview with Goldman Sachs. So.
And
I have to
how
think-
can you tell that? How can you tell the ones who?
You do your
Preparation?
homework, not just about Goldman, but about our division as best you can. I would give, if you have the name of the interviewer, right, check out their LinkedIn, check out where they're from. The more you can make a personal connection, with people, whether it be the person you're interviewing with or your client, the more memorable you are, the more, and I've heard our head boss say, be the kind of person that people want to work with.
At the end of the day, work is work, but you also have to build those friendships, and these are my colleagues, but you can have a personal conversation, they're there to help me, and I can go to personal questions or work-related questions, that needs to, have fun when you're working.
Have fun, enjoy the highs, learn from the lows. I had to say, in my career, one of my lowest lows and highest highs comes from the same client, right? None of it lasts forever. So I was newly promoted. I got a client that was probably more profile than I deserved at that point. I made a mistake on his tax return, almost blew up the entire corporate program. I had all the bosses, my name in front of all the bosses that you don't want your name being in front of them for, right? Thankfully, my client said, listen, this is one mistake on Chris. There had been some other issues that he was concerned with that weren't really related to me. Fast forward, I won a size of his portfolio was managed by another firm. Fast forward a few years, I literally said, I don't have to wow this guy, so I have to not mess up for a few years, and that's what I did. Then I pointed something out, and he mentioned he wasn't happy with them. Again, fast forward, I won the business. That's probably the most proud accomplishment I have in my life. I kind of went from, I'm blowing up my entire career here to my biggest win. And then fast forward, he retired, and a windfall of assets this year came to me. And just by, and I tell people, you know how I did that? By doing the job I was told and taught.
Sticking with it.
Sticking with it. So learn from the highs. Enjoy the highs. Learn from the lows. Neither one lasts forever.
And I know you're not a recruiter, but can you talk a little bit about the recruiting process and the application process and what, when folks who are interested should start working?
I can a little bit. So the interview process, I'm not exactly sure where you submit your resume, but I can follow up and get that to you. I believe they do an initial, a recruiting office does an initial review of resumes, and they will try to get it according to the jobs that you provided, whether it be New York City or New Jersey. They'll send it to us. We'll set up generally a day of interviews. So you will be interviewing for 3 hours, but it will be half hour with Meghan and a half hour with me, and then so that we try to get you in front of everyone in a short period of time, relatively short period of time. And that's your time to sign. I'm sorry?
Meet a lot of personalities, get to know. I've interviewed with Chris, and we talked about TikTok the entire time, and that's how I knew. Like, you can have personal conversations, and I also remember those conversations till the day I retired.
Yeah, I would say the overall application process and stuff like that, going through it is you submit your resume and stuff, and don't be surprised if you don't hear it for a second, because that doesn't mean you didn't get it, but that just means and you see it now on the other end, how many resumes that you might get, and you have to go through all those before you hear back. So don't be discouraged right away, but don't be afraid to follow up, and that's also something as well. And then, like you said, the interview process, 3 30-minute interviews back to back to back. I feel like now you're able to tell who prepared for those, because that's a huge thing as well.
And we're very lucky because we have a very nice relationship with them. So Brian usually, once they get posted, sends them to us, and then we promote them to you.
Yeah,
That's why you have to check your emails.
we just
Usually.
You Pat and Mary, they're amazing.
Yeah, when I started, it was me, Meg, and then 2 other people from FDU as well. So FDU has a great relationship, and we just hired Ethan, who just started recently, just passed all of his exams. And so it's a great relationship to have, and yeah, just keep asking questions and use Pat as a resource.
Don't be afraid to network and reach out, like connect on LinkedIn with us, the analysts, the account managers. We're more than happy. I know I'm more than happy to take a phone call and walk you guys through the process or answer any questions. So it's a great way to
Be your own advocate.
drive your own bus.
And I like to Billy, what you were saying, well, you were all saying how the interview process goes both ways. Now, obviously, it's a little bit tilted from the employer side, but you want to make sure it's a good fit. You don't want to put yourself in a position where, and that's why it's important to be authentic. And during your job search process, we had a very weird situation. Is it okay to speak to?
Yeah.
Okay, so when it's a former, he's gone, but we were dealing with the former president of the university, son-in-law, who was working at the place, and so that he met with them, they loved him, they gave him an offer, and it was his first interview, and he was like, they want me to tell them by tomorrow night. And I'm like, well, you're not doing that. I go, it's fine. And I never worked with them before, and I was like, it's fine. Just tell them, thank you, you're flattered, and that you need X amount of time. Well, he did that, and what did they say?
I don't even remember.
They were like, no, you gotta tell us now.
Yeah, I asked for an extension, pretty much. I was like, I'm also like, I have another interview this Wednesday. Like, is there any way I can just wait until like Thursday or something? And they were like, no, we need to.
And then they called me all
And I was
set,
just like,
and he called me, and I said, you don't wanna work there.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't worry about it. You don't wanna work there.
Not taking
It-
that job is.
Although I did feel a little bad, I was like, I told you to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a
But
good
it's a
decision.
good indication of the
now-
culture, and I was like, if they're doing this right up front, you don't wanna work there.
And then looking at the role now, and that's another thing when I was applying to jobs, I kind of didn't know what each role was. So knowing the role you're applying to is huge too. Like looking at that role and then looking at this role, two completely different things. And I'm much more happy doing this role than I would have been doing that role. Doing it for over a year now and kind of learning it.
When you get that interview, ask questions, right? And that's probably as old as time, I tell you. But do your research. I don't care if they're scripted questions. I can't tell you. I've been on a number of interviews, and do you have any questions for us? Well, and then it's something that they came up with the top of their head, and I'm like, give me something you Googled, man. Like show me that you put in some effort, right? Effort. That's the way.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to show a person when you get onto that interview. But that's an example.
We coach our students to prepare 6 questions, but only ask 2.
Yeah.
Right?
Right, that's perfect.
Hey, even if I told you this tomorrow at 3, it's a lot of time between that. You got your phone right? Google. Right? What question? Just scripted it. Hey,
That's
how can
it.
you describe the culture? And then maybe you do think of something else. So it's professionalism and things that, and I'll share another story that I thought about last week. You'd be surprised at professionalism and or the lack thereof sometimes, right? And one of our boss before, Brian, said, if you tell a client you're gonna call at 10, you best be calling them at 10. And I went, isn't that kind of self-explanatory and dumb? You'd be surprised, right? I was getting my floors done at my house, and I was told 8:30 and 9:30. At 9:50, I contacted the office administrator and said, oh, hold on. 20 minutes later, I finally called, and she goes, oh, yeah, sorry for late. They're gonna be there between 11:30. Like, so no one was gonna call me. Is that just textbook bad customer service, right? Like, but you'd be surprised, right? You know that you're supposed to ask questions, right? Do the things that you know you're supposed to do. And I remember being in your seats and going, wow, if you have to be told that, how, would you be surprised at how often those basic things are not applied by a lot of the population?
I treat all my job interviews as a work assignment or an exam that I was studying for, so that'll be my biggest piece of advice is, it's just like it's a project due, and it's, you might not be getting graded on it, but it's for yourself, and you gotta study for the interviews.
I have candidates that have been finalists for a role that didn't get the job because they forgot to send a thank you note. And I've been told by recruiters, and when they tell me that, I get so embarrassed because I take it personally. I was like, I told them to do that. Simple things like simple
I'll say a
houses.
question.
Yeah, well, forgive me for if this is not sorry, I came from personal work, so. I was just gonna ask, you guys mentioned how you guys, recommend doing an MBA and all that stuff. So do you guys do like reimbursement or like some sort of sponsorship program or?
I mean, I know I just finished it, so for example, at our firm, you have to work at the firm for 1 full year in order to get reimbursed. And our firm does $10,000 per calendar year, so it doesn't cover each semester. So for example, for myself, I thought I was gonna get reimbursed. That's a great question to ask, make sure you ask, is there any, do you have to be there a certain amount of time, or do you have to actually receive your MBA if you pay for it? You stay at the firm for X amount of years. Because for myself, I mean, I don't think that would have been a deciding factor, but I think it would have been good to know, as I did have other offers that did clearly say that it would be paying for MBA. I think here, the good part about being part of the Silberman College business, you get a slight scholarship, so.
What about the CFP or the
So,
CFA?
Yeah, so the CFA and CFP and stuff like that, once you front the cost, and then once you pass, then they reimburse you for that. That's how that process.
And does that extend also for the certifications like SIEs?
So that's all covered.
Is that covered?
Yeah, and there's your study materials and everything like that is covered by the firm. And then they put you through a course and everything like that, you have to pass in a certain amount of time.
Billy, how long do you have to pass your tests when you get hired? Let's ignore the SIA, let's say, because everyone's gonna get their SIA before they come.
So,
We have to run to another meeting.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Nice meeting you.
You're 7 and 66, how, 5 minutes left?
yeah, I'd say, so you come in and it's a 6-week process and you get 2 weeks to pass each exam. And then training starts. And then if you don't pass, then you're crunched down to maybe another try. It's overall probably 3 months with the overall training and everything like
The
that.
training is with Goldman or is it like
Yes,
separate? Oh,
and that's another thing about IMS Goldman is the training is what sets us apart from a lot of other firms. I have friends that work at different banks and everything like that, and it's the training we go through. I was in a 4-hour training that, not like a workshop. And it's constantly learning. I think that's something that's lost in a lot of other firms is they get you in the training for 2 weeks and then you're sent to your desk and that's it. We're constantly in different levels. I'm at level 2,000 or 3,000 now. Just doing different levels of learning, and I think that's a huge.
You're
part.
studying for CFA? I know.
I'm looking into studying for my CFA or CFP. So something around that.
So you guys are talking about getting your MBA, after already being employed. What route would you suggest taking? Like getting your MBA before you even look to get a full-time job or at the same time?
So I'll start us off. I don't have my MBA. So I think that it's also in what you want to do. I think Meg would advocate for getting your MBA. I think it's great. And if I look back, I would get my MBA. I think it's a great resource to have. And only doing it in 1 year, you cut the cost a lot. It's a huge thing to look at as well. However, I'm looking at doing a CFA or CFP, and I think that would be another route that you could take. But I know Meg would advocate as well.
I definitely think, I mean, as Chris said before, you can't take education away from you, so even if you get your MBA and you start to apply afterwards, it's also important to time the market, because I know I have friends that finish their MBA with me in May and still don't have their full-time jobs. I just got lucky, so I was like, I had my internship and I was like, I'm just gonna start applying full-time, so I was talking to Pat, landed the job at Ayco Goldman Sachs, and I'm like, I can't turn away an offer.
It's only gonna help you.
It's only gonna help me,
Yeah.
so it's like, more, it's up to you at the end of the day, or if you're able to handle both working full-time and doing school full-time. I'll say it is very difficult, but it's not doable, so.
I went through and didn't work. I was in the undergraduate advising office, like helping students register for classes and stuff like that. I had kind of figured, I'm already in school mode,
Yeah.
kind of just keep going.
Great ways.
I was fortunate enough, my parents were supportive, so I lived at home and, worked part-time, I caddied, so I was able to kind of just scrape by, but it's tough because there's the enticement, wow, I can actually start making money, but, so there's not a clear-cut answer. I'd probably say just go through and get it, because
1 year.
once you're done, you're done.
You also already know the professors here, and you know how the systems work, and you already know people in your classes, so it just makes it that much easier.
think we have a question from Metro, I think.
Yes. Hi, hello. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Gloria, and I'm actually a senior accounting student at FDU, and I'm a vice president of the club. My question would be, what would you say is what the most successful internet employees at your firm do different than everybody else?
I mean, it's the AEO, right? It's the attitude, the effort, and the organization, but, when we say drive your own bus, that can mean, I'm trying to look up there, on the screen. That can mean a number of different things, right? Sometimes opportunities are going to be right in front of you and they're going to be very apparent and easy to grasp. Sometimes they are not, right? Things like, for a while, the person who runs our office now is big on culture, right? He didn't say, well, eventually he came to all the advisors and said, as part of your annual goals, I want to know how you are going to contribute to the culture of this office. Before that, right, all the new hires that come in, I order pizza and we sit in our conference room and say, oh, listen, tell me about where you're from. And I grab a few other people around the office. So and that's an example of finding an opportunity that wasn't necessarily there. When you get on a team, right, I've had someone on my team that said, hey, listen, Chris, you kind of track, this process, estimated payments for taxes this way. I think, take a look at the way I kind of came up with, right? That person, the wheel wasn't broken, but they broke it and put it back together better than it was, right? So they didn't reinvent the wheel, but they made it a little bit better. So I would say what sets some of the early stars apart is finding the opportunities that aren't necessarily right in front of your face, but maybe a few feet away. And sometimes that takes, I know our boss will put time on his calendar for certain things, right? It's easy for it to get involved in the day-to-day. Thinking that bigger picture, well, what am I doing with my career? What can I be doing different from a culture perspective, from an education perspective? And it's easy to lose that, right? Setting time and saying, well, I'm going to take this half hour. What should I be doing differently? Right? I've learned that if I don't discuss the performance and goals of my team, we get to the mid-year annual review, and it's like, well, Chris, if you felt this way, why didn't you say something 3 months ago when this happened? And it's like, well, it wasn't the right time. So again, finding the opportunities, setting time to think about what could I be different, because once you get running, it's very easy to fall into the day-to-day monotony. So find those opportunities that are not right for you.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for the great information you shared today. Nice having you.
Last questions.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you, guys. Good luck.
I'm Meg, nice to meet you.
Chris. Yeah, nice to meet you. Or see you. I just
Thank you so much.
8 months ago. I came back. Yeah. So I was off on Labor Day. So
How you guys doing?
No, my daughter's on me. Yeah, it was funny. Like, I work like now. Now it's one of those times where.
I think, is he staying at your buyers? You go somewhere else? Taxes, like, I think 4 taxes are different. I know people that that's like 80-hour weeks. But you guys should be there. That's what matters. Like Marco, when he worked at EY, resume, and it's John. John's a smart guy. Yeah, no, I do like it. Probably start taking like CFA. It's a little different. It kind of doesn't apply to everything. I definitely like my role a lot.